What happens when one of the most beloved talk show hosts in America sits down with one of the most controversial royals in the world? You might expect pleasantries, laughter, maybe some light-hearted banter about life across the pond. But what unfolded on the set of The Kelly Clarkson Show was anything but ordinary. In what started as a seemingly friendly conversation, things took a dark turn when Kelly asked a question that Prince Harry clearly was not prepared to answer. The tension in the studio became so thick you could cut it with a knife, and what happened next left the audience completely silent, the crew scrambling, and Prince Harry storming off the set in a way that no one saw coming. Before we get into all the details, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling me what you think really happened here. Because this story has layers that go way deeper than what you see on the surface. The studio lights were bright that afternoon, almost too bright, as Kelly Clarkson walked onto her set with that signature smile that had made her a household name. The audience was buzzing with excitement. Phones were tucked away, as per studio rules, and everyone was ready for what they thought would be another entertaining episode. Prince Harry was scheduled as the guest, and this was supposed to be a home run for the show. Big name, big draw, big ratings. Kelly had done her homework, or at least her team had prepared the usual talking points. Life in California, adjusting to American culture, fatherhood, maybe some soft questions about his various projects and initiatives. Standard fare for a daytime talk show. When Prince Harry walked out, the audience erupted in applause. He was wearing a casual blazer, no tie, looking relaxed, or at least trying to look relaxed. There was something in his eyes, though, something that Kelly picked up on immediately. She had been doing this long enough to read people to sense when someone was carrying weight they did not want to put down. But this was television, and the show must go on. So she greeted him with warmth. They hugged briefly, and he sat down on the cream-colored couch that had hosted hundreds of guests before him. Kelly started with the easy stuff. How are you enjoying California? What is it like raising your kids here? Do you miss anything about England besides the weather? Harry answered smoothly, almost robotically, hitting all the expected notes. He talked about the sunshine, the freedom, the ability to just be a dad without the constant scrutiny. But Kelly noticed he kept glancing at the audience, not in a nervous way, but in a way that seemed almost defiant, like he was daring someone to challenge him. Then Kelly shifted gears. She leaned forward slightly, her tone still friendly, but with a little more edge to it. So Harry, she said, a lot of people have watched your journey over the past few years, and there has been a lot of conversation about family, about bridges that maybe got burned, about things that were said publicly that can never really be unsaid. Do you ever think about the cost of all that transparency? The question hung in the air for just a moment too long. Harry's jaw tightened, just barely, but Kelly saw it. The audience felt the shift too, that subtle change in energy that happens when something real is about to break through the carefully constructed veneer of celebrity interview protocol. Harry smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. I think, he said slowly, that transparency is something people say they want until they actually get it. Then suddenly you are the villain for telling the truth. So I am not sure I understand the question. Kelly, are you asking me if I regret being honest, or are you asking me if I regret who I was honest about? Kelly did not back down. She held his gaze, her own smile fading into something more serious. I am asking if you think there is a difference between being honest and being hurtful. Because from where a lot of people are sitting, it looked like some of that honesty came at the expense of people who could not defend themselves in the same way you could. The audience was silent now. This was not the light-hearted banter they had signed up for. This was real, and it was getting uncomfortable fast. Harry leaned back, crossing his arms. That is an interesting perspective, he said, his voice cooling. But I think what you are really asking is whether I should have just kept my mouth shut. Whether I should have continued to play the role that everyone wanted me to play, smile for the cameras, wave at the crowds, and pretend that everything was fine when it was not. Is that what you think I should have done? Kelly shook her head. I am not saying that at all. What I am saying is that when you choose to go public with private family matters, especially in the way that you did, there are consequences, not just for you, but for everyone involved. And some of those people did not get to write a book, did not get to sit down for interviews, did not get to tell their side of the story. Harry's expression darkened. Maybe they should have. Maybe if they had been willing to have those conversations privately, we would not be having this one publicly. But that is not what happened, is it? What happened was years of silence, years of being told to just deal with it, to just accept the way things were, because that is the way things have always been. So forgive me if I do not feel particularly guilty about finally saying what needed to be said. Kelly nodded slowly, processing his words. Okay, I hear you. But here is where I get stuck. You talk a lot about wanting privacy, about wanting to protect your family, about wanting to live a normal life. And yet, you are also very public about the things that most people would consider deeply private. So which is it? Do you want privacy, or do you want to control the narrative? That question hit differently. Harry uncrossed his arms, leaning forward now, his voice dropping to something quieter, but no less intense. You know what, Kelly? That is exactly the kind of question that proves you do not get it. None of you get it. Privacy is not about hiding. Privacy is about having the right to choose what you share and when you share it. It is about not having your life dictated by an institution that cares more about its image than about the people who are suffering within it. So when I choose to share my story, on my terms, that is not about controlling the narrative. That is about reclaiming my own life. Kelly sat back, her expression unreadable. So everyone else is wrong, and you are right. Is that what you are saying? Harry's eyes flashed. I am saying that I lived it. You did not. They did not, he gestured, vaguely toward the audience. So maybe, just maybe, I have a better understanding of what actually happened than people who only know what they read in the tabloids, or see in carefully staged photo opportunities. The tension was palpable now. Kelly glanced at her producers off stage, and there was a moment where it seemed like she might steer the conversation somewhere safer. But she did not. Instead, she pressed forward. Let me ask you this then, she said. Do you think your mother would be proud of the choices you have made? Because a lot of people invoke her name, talk about how she would have felt, how she would have wanted you to live your life. But I wonder if she would have wanted this. The division, the public feuds, the estrangement from your family, and that was the moment everything changed. Harry's face went pale, then red. His hands gripped the armrests of the couch, and for a second it looked like he might actually stand up and walk away right then and there. But he stayed seated, his voice barely controlled. You do not get to talk about my mother, he said quietly, each word deliberate. You do not get to sit there and pretend to know what she would have wanted or how she would have felt. You did not know her. You did not watch her suffer. You did not see what that institution did to her. So do not you dare sit there and use her memory to make some kind of point. Kelly's expression softened, but only slightly. Harry, I am not trying to use her memory. I am trying to understand yours. Because from the outside, it looks like you are fighting the same battles she fought, but in a very different way. And I am just asking if you have ever considered that maybe, just maybe, there was a better way to handle all of this. Harry stood up then. Not dramatically, not with a big flourish, but quietly, purposefully. There it is, he said, his voice heavy with something that sounded like exhaustion mixed with anger. There is the judgment I knew was coming. You invited me here under the pretense of a conversation, but what you really wanted was to put me on trial, to make me justify my choices to you, to them, to everyone watching at home. Well, I am done justifying myself. Kelly stood up too, her voice rising slightly. Harry, that is not what this is. Is it not? Harry shot back. Because it feels an awful lot like you have already made up your mind about me, about my family, about everything. And you know what the worst part is? I actually thought this might be different. I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would actually listen instead of just waiting for their turn to tell me how wrong I am. The studio was frozen. Camera operators did not know whether to keep rolling. The audience was completely still. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others looked riveted. Kelly stood there, microphone still in hand, trying to figure out how to salvage what had become a complete derailment of everything this interview was supposed to be. But Harry was not done. You want to know what the real problem is? Harry continued, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The real problem is that people like you, people with platforms like this, you pretend to care about mental health, about honesty, about breaking down stigmas. But the moment someone actually does it, the moment someone actually stands up and says, this is what happened to me, this is how I was treated, suddenly it is too much. Suddenly it is inappropriate, or it is hurtful, or it is disrespectful. You cannot have it both ways, Kelly. Kelly's expression hardened. She was not used to being challenged like this on her own show in front of her own audience. "I am not trying to have it both ways," she said, her voice firm. "What I am trying to do is have an actual conversation with you, not just let you use this platform to relitigate the same arguments you have been making for years now. At some point, Harry, you have to ask yourself if you are actually moving forward, or if you are just stuck in a cycle of anger and resentment." Harry laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Oh, that is rich. That is really rich coming from someone who built their entire career on being the underdog, on standing up to powerful people in the music industry. You got to tell your story, Kelly. You got to talk about how you were mistreated, how you fought for your rights, how you took control of your own narrative. But when I do it, suddenly it is a cycle of anger and resentment. Do you see the hypocrisy in that?" The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some people were nodding, others were shaking their heads. This had gone so far off the rails that there was no bringing it back, and everyone in the room knew it. Kelly took a breath, visibly trying to compose herself. "You are right," she said slowly. "I did tell my story, but I also did not burn every bridge in the process. I did not alienate the people who helped me get to where I am. I found a way to move forward without destroying everything behind me." "And there it is," Harry said, pointing at her. "There is the real issue. You are not upset that I told my story. You are upset about who I told it about. You are upset because I did not protect the institution, because I did not keep the secrets that everyone else seems so desperate to keep. Well, I am sorry, but I am not going to apologize for that. Not to you, not to anyone." Kelly stepped closer to him, her voice dropping but losing none of its intensity. "I am not asking you to apologize. What I am asking you to do is take some responsibility. Because whether you want to admit it or not, your actions have consequences. Your father is the king now, and you are publicly trashing him. Your brother, who you grew up with, who you were supposed to be close to, you have basically cut him out of your life. Your family is fractured, Harry, and you played a role in that." Harry's eyes were blazing now. "You think I do not know that? You think I wake up every day and feel good about the fact that I do not talk to my brother anymore? You think I wanted any of this? But what was the alternative, Kelly? What was I supposed to do? Just keep quiet, keep smiling, keep pretending that everything was fine while I watched my wife get destroyed by the same machine that destroyed my mother?" Kelly did not flinch. "I think there is a difference between protecting your wife and waging a public war against your entire family. I think there were private ways to handle this, ways that did not involve sitting down with television cameras and airing every grievance you have ever had." Harry shook his head, his voice rising. "You do not get it? There were no private ways. We tried private. We tried going through the proper channels, having the conversations behind closed doors, following the protocol. And you know what happened? Nothing. Absolutely nothing changed. So yes, we went public, because sometimes that is the only way to make people actually pay attention." Kelly crossed her arms. "Or maybe it is the only way to make sure people pay attention to you. Because, let us be honest, Harry, before all of this, before the interviews and the book and the documentary, you were just the spare. You were just the other brother, the one who was not going to be king, the one who was always going to be in someone else's shadow. But now everyone knows your name. Now you are the story. So forgive me if I wonder whether some of this is about justice and how much of it is about relevance." The audience gasped. That was a direct hit, and everyone knew it. Harry's face went through about 5 different emotions in the span of 2 seconds. Shock, hurt, anger, and then something that looked almost like vindication, as if she had just proven his point about how people really saw him. "Wow," he said softly. "There it is. That is what you really think. That is what all of you really think, is it not? That this is about ego, that this is about wanting attention, that I am just some bitter, jealous younger brother who could not handle not being the favorite. You know what, Kelly? That says a lot more about you than it does about me." Kelly uncrossed her arms, and for the first time since this conversation had started, she looked like she might actually regret how far this had gone. But she did not back down. "I am just saying what a lot of people are thinking, Harry, and if you are going to put yourself out there the way you have to be willing to hear it." "I have heard it," Harry said, his voice tight. "I have heard it for years. From the press, from the public, from people who do not know me and never will, but I did not come here to hear it from you. I thought this was going to be different. I thought maybe you, of all people, would understand what it is like to be underestimated, to be dismissed, to have people question your motives every time you try to stand up for yourself." Kelly's voice softened, just slightly. "Harry, I do understand that. But I also understand that at some point you have to stop seeing yourself as a victim. You have to stop blaming everyone else and start looking at your own role in all of this." Harry stared at her for a long moment, and something in his expression shifted. It was not anger anymore, or at least not just anger. It was something deeper, something sadder. "You know what the most exhausting part of all of this is?" he said quietly. "It is not the criticism. It is not the headlines or the think pieces or the people on social media who have opinions about my life. It is this. It is sitting here trying to explain myself to someone who has already decided who I am and what my motivations are. It is the constant feeling that no matter what I say, no matter how I say it, it will never be enough. I will always be too much or not enough, too angry or not angry enough, too public or not public enough. There is no winning. There is only different ways of losing." The studio was completely silent. Even Kelly seemed at a loss for words, which was rare for her. She opened her mouth to respond, but Harry held up a hand. "Let me ask you something," he said. "If your family had treated you the way mine treated me, if you had watched someone you love be torn apart by tabloids and institutions, and nobody did anything to stop it, what would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet? Would you have just accepted it and moved on?" Kelly met his eyes. "I do not know," she admitted. "I honestly do not know. But I do know that I would have thought very carefully about the long-term consequences of my actions. I would have considered whether the short-term satisfaction of speaking my truth was worth the permanent damage it might cause to relationships that can never be repaired." Harry nodded slowly. "And that is where we differ. Because I have thought about those consequences every single day, and I decided that my truth, my sanity, my family's safety, that all of that was worth more than maintaining relationships that were built on silence and complicity. Maybe that makes me selfish. Maybe that makes me a bad son or a bad brother. But it makes me a good husband and a good father. And at the end of the day, those are the only titles that really matter to me anymore." Kelly took a deep breath. "So where does that leave us, Harry? Where do we go from here in this conversation?" Harry glanced at the cameras, then back at Kelly. "I think," he said slowly, "we have probably said everything that needs to be said. Actually, we have probably said more than we should have. But that seems to be the pattern with me, does it not?" Kelly did not smile. "Are you saying you want to end the interview?" Harry looked around the studio, at the crew members who were all frozen in place, at the audience who were watching this unfold like it was a car crash they could not look away from, and then back at Kelly. "Here is the thing," he said, his voice steady now, almost eerily calm. "I came here because I thought we could have a real conversation, and we did. It just was not the conversation either of us expected. But I am tired, Kelly. I am tired of defending myself, tired of justifying my choices, tired of being put on trial every single time I try to tell my story. So yes, I think we are done here." Kelly nodded, and there was something in her expression that might have been respect or might have been relief. "All right," she said. "If that is how you feel, it is," Harry said. "And for what it is worth, I actually appreciate that you did not pull your punches. Most people would have kept this surface level, would have let me give my rehearsed answers and moved on. At least you were honest about what you really think. So thank you for that, I guess." Kelly extended her hand. "For what it is worth, I hope you find whatever it is you are looking for. I really do." Harry looked at her hand for a moment, then shook it. But as he released her hand and turned to walk away, Kelly spoke again. "Wait," she said, and there was something in her voice that made Harry stop. He did not turn around immediately, just stood there with his back to her, his shoulders tense. Kelly continued, "I have one more question, and I think you owe it to everyone here to answer it. After everything you have said, after all the interviews and the revelations and the burned bridges, do you actually feel better? Do you actually feel free? Or do you just feel alone?" Harry turned around slowly, and the look on his face was something nobody in that studio would forget. It was not anger anymore. It was not defensiveness or frustration. It was raw, unfiltered pain. And in that moment, everyone watching realized that beneath all the bravado, Beneath all the carefully constructed arguments about truth and transparency, there was just a man who was hurting. "You really want to know?" Harry asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You really want to know how I feel?" Kelly nodded. "I do. I think everyone here does." Harry walked back toward the couch, but he did not sit down. He stood there, looking out at the audience, and when he spoke, it was like he was talking to all of them, not just Kelly. "I feel," he began, then stopped. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed so human, so vulnerable, that it cut through every bit of celebrity and royalty and reminded everyone that he was just a person. "I feel like I made the hardest decision of my life, and I do not know if it was the right one. I feel like I saved my family by leaving my family, and I do not know if that makes me brave or if that makes me a coward. I feel like I told the truth, and the truth cost me everything. So, no, Kelly, I do not feel better. I do not feel free. But I also do not feel trapped anymore. And maybe that is the best I can hope for." The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Even Kelly seemed moved by the honesty in his voice. But then Harry's expression shifted again, hardening. "But you know what I also feel?" he continued. "I feel like I am standing here, being vulnerable, being honest, and it is still not enough. Because tomorrow, someone will take this conversation and twist it into whatever narrative fits their agenda. Someone will say, 'I am playing the victim again.' Someone will say, 'I am being manipulative.' Someone will say, 'I should have stayed quiet.' And that is what I cannot escape, no matter how honest I am, no matter how much I try to explain myself. The story has already been written, and nothing I say or do is going to change it." Kelly stepped closer to him. "Maybe you are right," she said. "Maybe the story has been written. But stories can be rewritten, Harry. Narratives can change. But that requires something from you that I am not sure you are ready to give." "And what is that?" Harry asked, his voice sharp again. "Forgiveness," Kelly said simply. "Not just forgiving them, but letting yourself be forgiven. Because right now, you are so focused on being right, on making sure everyone knows what was done to you, that you have not left any room for healing. And healing requires letting go of some of that anger, some of that need to prove your point." Harry laughed, and this time it was bitter. "That is easy for you to say. You are not the one who was lied about, lied to, used as a pawn in someone else's game. You do not get to tell me to forgive when you have no idea what I would be forgiving." "I am not telling you to forgive," Kelly said, her voice firm. "I am asking you if you ever want to be happy again, truly happy. Or if you want to spend the rest of your life fighting battles that can never really be won. Because from where I am standing, it looks like you are choosing the fight. And I wonder if maybe, on some level, that is easier than doing the real work of moving on." Harry stared at her, and for a moment it looked like he might explode again, might unleash another wave of anger and frustration. But instead, he just shook his head slowly. "You do not understand," he said quietly. "You really do not understand." "Then help me understand," Kelly said, her voice softer now. "Help all of us understand. Because right now, all we see is someone who is clearly in pain but who keeps pushing away anyone who tries to reach out. All we see is someone who says they want privacy, but who cannot stop talking about the very things they claim to want to keep private. Help me understand how that makes sense." Harry was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was tired. "It does not make sense," he admitted. "None of it makes sense. But making sense is not the same thing as being true. And the truth is messy and contradictory and complicated. The truth is that I do want privacy, but I also need people to understand why I made the choices I made. The truth is that I love my family, but I also cannot be around them without feeling like I am drowning. The truth is that I am angry and hurt and scared and relieved all at the same time. And I do not know how to reconcile all of those feelings into something that makes sense to anyone, including myself." Kelly nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I can accept that. But Harry, at some point, you are going to have to stop explaining and start living. You are going to have to stop looking backward and start looking forward. Because this cycle you are in, this constant need to defend and justify and explain, it is not sustainable. It is going to eat you alive if you let it." Harry's jaw tightened. "Maybe it already has," he said quietly. The weight of those words hung in the air, and Kelly looked like she did not know how to respond. She glanced at her producers again, and there was clearly a conversation happening through gestures and looks about whether to continue or to cut to commercial, or to just end this entire thing. But before anyone could make a decision, Harry spoke again. "Can I tell you something?" he said, looking directly at Kelly. "Something I have never said publicly." Kelly hesitated, then nodded. Of course, Harry took a breath. "There are days when I wake up and I wonder if I made a terrible mistake. Not about leaving, not about protecting my family, but about how I did it. About going public the way I did, about saying the things I said. There are days when I think about my brother, about the relationship we used to have, and I wonder if there was a way to do all of this without losing him. And the answer that I keep coming back to is no, there was not, because the institution would not allow for anything in between. It was all or nothing. Stay silent or speak out, be part of the system or be cast out completely. There was no middle ground. So I made my choice, and I have to live with it." Kelly's expression softened. "Do you ever think about reaching out to him? To your brother?" Harry smiled sadly. "Every day. But what would I even say? How do you bridge that kind of gap? How do you come back from the things that have been said and done? I do not have those answers, Kelly. I wish I did, but I do not." Kelly was quiet for a moment, then said, "Maybe you start with 'I am sorry.' Not sorry for telling your truth, but sorry for the pain that truth caused. Sorry for the collateral damage. Because, Harry, whether you meant to or not, there was collateral damage. And acknowledging that does not make you wrong about the bigger picture. It just makes you human." Harry looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "You know what?" he said, his voice changing again, becoming colder. "This is exactly what I was talking about. This right here. You just spent the last however many minutes we have been talking challenging me, pushing me, questioning my motives, and now you are trying to position yourself as the voice of reason, the one offering wisdom and guidance. But all you are really doing is what everyone else does. You are trying to get me to say what you want me to say, to be who you want me to be. And I am done with that." Kelly looked genuinely surprised. "Harry, that is not what I was doing." "Is it not?" Harry challenged. "Because it feels a lot like you are trying to get me to admit that I was wrong, that I should apologize, that I should be the one to fix everything. But where is that same energy for the people who created this situation in the first place? Where is the call for them to apologize? Where is the demand that they take responsibility for the way they treated us, for the lies they told, for the protection they offered to some people, but not to others?" Kelly held up her hands. "You are right," she said. "You are absolutely right. They should apologize. They should take responsibility. But Harry, you cannot control what they do. You can only control what you do. And right now, what you are doing is not working. Anyone can see that." Harry laughed harshly. "Not working for who, though? Not working for you? Not working for the people who want me to just shut up and go away. Not working for the institution that wants to pretend none of this ever happened. Because, from my perspective, from my family's perspective, it is working just fine. We are safe, we are together, and we are living our lives on our own terms. So maybe it is not about whether it is working. Maybe it is about whether you are comfortable with it." The tension had ratcheted back up to unbearable levels. Kelly's face was flushed, and Harry looked like he was seconds away from actually walking out. The crew was frozen, the audience was barely breathing, and everyone knew that they were witnessing something that had gone way beyond a typical celebrity interview. So there you have it. An interview that started with standard questions about life in California and ended with Prince Harry walking off the set after one of the most intense confrontations ever aired on daytime television. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below.